Hi, everybody. Welcome back to day 4 of Advent and the Christmas Mystery by Justine Garter. And we are about to find out what Joachim is going to find under or behind the next door of the Advent calendar. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. When Joachim woke up on Friday, the 4th of December, he made sure it was completely quiet in the house before he opened the 4th door of the calendar. The picture showed a man in a light blue robe that looked a bit like a nightgown. In his hand, he held a tall staff, but Joachim had no time to look at the picture properly because a scrap of paper fell out into his bed. He unfolded it and read, Joshua. Elizabeth and the angel Ephrael hurried after the sheep and the lamb. They passed a red log cabin and a few patches of crops in a clearing in the woods. From a rise, Ephrael pointed down at a lake. That's the biggest lake in Scandinavia, he said. The watch shows that 1891 years have passed since Jesus was born, but we've only just arrived in Sweden. A strongly flowing river ran out of the lake. A bridge arched over the river, and they walked over it to the other side. This is the river Gotha, said Ephrael. We'll follow an old cart track along the riverbank. Lambkin, Lambkin, coaxed Elizabeth. But the sheep and the lamb had already begun running again. They passed a village and saw people streaming along the road towards a red-painted church. Most of them were on foot, but some of them were sitting in big horse-drawn carts. The men were dressed in black suits and black hats, and many of the women were in black as well. Some of them were carrying hymn books. It must be Sunday, said Elizabeth. They paused for a moment and looked down at all the people. Suddenly, a little boy noticed them, but he scarcely had time to look surprised, because at that same moment, the angel Ephrael began running again. Elizabeth had to hurry to keep up. Once she turned and looked back, but all the people in front of the church had vanished. The horses and carts had vanished too. When they had left the village behind, Elizabeth turned to the angel and said, A little boy saw us, but nobody else noticed. Splendid. We try not to attract too much attention. Sometimes we can't help someone catching a sight of us, but a glimpse is quite enough. They ran on through the woods and fields. Now and again, they saw some people haymaking or reaping corn with scythes. Sometimes they had to take a roundabout way so as not to scare them. Before long, the sheep and the lamb found pasture that was so green and tempting that it dazzled the eyes. Now's our chance, whispered Elizabeth. If we go up to them carefully. But just then, a man came walking towards them, wearing a blue tunic, holding a tall staff curved at the top. He said solemnly, Peace be with you who walk on the narrow way along the Gotha River. My name is Joshua, the shepherd. Then you are one of us, said Ephrael. Elizabeth didn't understand what the angel meant by that, but then the shepherd said, I am coming with you to the Holy Land, for I must be in the fields when the angels announce the glad tidings of the birth of Jesus. Then Elizabeth had a bright idea. If you are a proper shepherd, perhaps you can herd the lamb in this direction. The shepherd bowed low. That's not difficult for a good shepherd. He went over to the sheep and the lamb, and the next moment the lamb was kneeling at Elizabeth's feet. She knelt down and stroked its soft fleece. I think you must be the fastest furry animal in the world, she said. But I caught you at last. The shepherd thumped his crook on the ground and said, To Bethlehem! To Bethlehem! The lamb and the sheep bounded away, the shepherd, the angel, and Elizabeth after them. As they ran, they looked down on a cluster of red timber houses that Ephrael explained was a town called Kungalv. That means King's Rock, and the town was given the name because the Scandinavian kings used to meet here to take counsel together. One of them was Sigurd Jorsalfar, said the angel. Jorsalfar, or Yorsalfar, means the pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And Sigurd was given that name because he had been on pilgrimage to the Holy Land where Jesus was born. Then they ran past a city at the mouth of the Gota River, where women in long dresses and men wearing hats and carrying walking sticks were parading up and down the streets, sitting in fine coaches drawn by 2 horses. That's Gothenburg, said Ephrael. The time is 1814, and Denmark has had to hand over Norway to Sweden. Now Norway will get her own constitution. Joshua the shepherd turned and waved to them. To Bethlehem, he called. To Bethlehem! They sped on through Sweden. Joachim had only just managed to hide the paper from the advent calendar in his secret box when his mother came into his room. And what was the picture today, she asked. Joachim knew he had no need to answer. Mama always wanted to look for herself. She clasped her hands together. It must be one of the shepherds in the fields. Why do you say in the fields? Asked Joachim. Mama told him that there were often pictures of shepherds in the lovely old advent calendars because the angels had come to the shepherds in the fields to tell them that the baby Jesus had been born. They've come as far as Gothenburg, explained Joachim. Gothenburg? Who are they? Elizabeth Hansen, the angel Ephrael, and Joshua the shepherd. They're going to Bethlehem. To Bethlehem! Mama stared at him in surprise. You mustn't let this old calendar get to you. They're only pictures. Joachim realized he couldn't go on telling Mama and Papa all he knew about Elizabeth. If he did, he would never be able to keep the secret of the scraps of paper that he was going to give Mama and Papa as a Christmas present. He realized something else, too. He would have to try to talk to John. He was the only person who knew where the magic advent calendar had come from. Perhaps he knew more about Elizabeth Hansen. But how could Joachim meet John? He wasn't allowed to go to town and to the market by himself. He had just come into the house from school that afternoon when someone rang the doorbell. It couldn't be Mama, because Joachim never locked the door from the inside. So, who could it be? He went out into the hall and opened the door. On the steps stood the bookseller who had given him the advent calendar. Ah, there you are, he said, just as I thought. Why? Asked Joachim, suddenly a little scared in case the bookseller had come to ask for the magic advent calendar back. Besides, how did he know where they lived? The bookseller put his hand into his coat pocket and took out a driving license. Your father left this behind, on the counter, he explained. I thought it must be yours, but since you didn't come back to the shop, I looked up your name in the telephone directory and found out where you lived. I live hereabouts myself, you see, at number 12 Clover Road. That wasn't far. One of Joachim's classmates lived at number 7. And how's it going with the magic advent calendar? Asked the bookseller. Great, said Joachim. There are some pieces of paper in it, too. Are there? Said the bookseller, and gave him a big smile. Well, I must be getting on, he said. It's a busy time for us booksellers. Joachim had decided not to say anything about the driving license until Papa mentioned it himself. Instead, he started to talk about something completely different. What's a pilgrimage? A pilgrim is someone who travels to a holy place, said Papa, helping himself to more fish pie. Like Sigurd Jorsalfar? Continued Joachim. He traveled all the way to Jerusalem, didn't he? That's why he's called the traveler to Jerusalem. Mama and Papa looked at one another. Have you been learning about Sigurd Jorsalfar at school? Asked Mama. Joachim shook his head. He decided to tell Papa about the driver's license after all. Have you found your driving license yet, Papa? Not a sign, said Papa crossly. But I have, said Joachim. He went into his room to fetch the driving license and handed it to Papa. Papa nearly choked on his dinner. Where did you find it, Joachim? Surely you didn't... You left it in the bookshop when we bought the Advent calendar. Papa looked as if he had had a visitation from an angel in broad daylight. He had in a way, too, except that the angel had sent a white-haired bookseller instead of coming himself. He came here before you got home, explained Joaquin. He said he'd looked in the telephone directory. Then Mama and Papa realized what had happened. Well, he is quite a bookseller, said Papa. He turned to Mama. Quite unusual, you know. And you're quite an unusual muddlehead, said Joaquin. I think that's a little bit... I don't know if he should be talking to his father that way. That kind of bothers me a little bit. But in any case, that is the end of day 4, and I can't wait to find out what's happening on day 5. And I'm so glad that Papa got his driving license back, but something's fishy about that bookseller, isn't there? Well, anyway, I guess we'll find out more tomorrow. So have a great evening, and I will be seeing you on day 5. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you can continue to get notifications every time we have a reading available. All right, I hope you're enjoying the Christmas mystery as much as I am for the second time around. Have a great day.